Hello and welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Welcome. I know folks are just coming into the webinar and I want to say thank you. Appreciate you joining us today. Our webinar today is managing conflict during times of crises. So, wonder what crises we might have to manage these days. Goodness. The webinar is just starting, and I know folks are still coming on, so we're going to give folks just a moment to come into the room with us. And before we begin, if you're listening in, just want you to know that we're here for you, and if we may support you in any way, I hope that you'll reach out. And particularly for today, on our talk around conflict resolution, managing conflict during times of high stress, which all of us would agree we're under right now. Let us know what your questions are. If we veer into an area in which you believe you have an opportunity for us to address something that's going on for you, don't hesitate to send us a message. You can send it to through the chat box, either through the greater group of attendees and panelists, or if you just want us to read it, you can also select send to panelists only, and I'll be monitoring that. All right, let's get started. So thank you again for joining us today. Our talk at this moment is about managing conflict during times of crises. And my name is Anissa Avon, and you'll see me on the video just shortly. I'm going to turn that off. I asked Roger. Hi, Roger.
Hello.
I said, Roger, are you going to turn on your video for us? You know what he said? I bet y'all can guess. What'd you say, Roger?
I'm about to have to put my hair in a ponytail because it's getting so long since I can't get a haircut. How does that answer it?
I told him that wasn't fair because I am literally stuck in a 90s sitcom. Like, you remember that sitcom, Who's the Boss? That's me right now. So it is not fair that you get to shield yourself from, having to look at your hair.
Lucky.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. This conversation today, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Without our sponsors, Roger, if you'll shift that slide a little bit, without our sponsors, this would not be possible. So I want to say thank you to David Whitmarsh and his team of expert marketing consultants over at the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. I also want to say thank you to Insperity. And Insperity, HR that makes a difference, has offered all of our sponsors, and I asked Insperity what kind of giveaway, what kind of freebie, what can you do for our folks? And they said, how about a free HR financial analysis and one-on-one debrief? And I'll share with you what I've been sharing all week long in their summit, or all summit long, I should say, is that this is actually a no obligation HR budget analysis, confidential report, and one-on-one debrief. The goal is to help you identify the real costs associated over the life cycle of your employees. They know that not every individual or company that takes advantage of this offer is going to be a good fit for them. So, but the value that you can receive off of this confidential report and analysis will really help you, especially right now when you're looking to revamp your budget or shift your priorities significantly based on this pivot that we're all having to take. So I am also going to just briefly mention to you a couple of the packages that we have put together. Roger, will you? There we go. First, this Leading in a Crisis Summit. There are 40 plus speakers that we have lined up. We actually only have about 28 that are actually live and on the site right now. So do come back shortly to check out the other speakers that we're bringing on board and their other talks. Leading in a Crisis, Actionable Business and HR Strategies for Navigating Crisis and Change. When I went to my team and I said, what do we need to do here to be of service to do something besides just watch the pandemic create havoc? My team said, we've got a lot of experts. Let's reach out. Let's find out what people want to hear, what support we can provide, and let's create this. So I want to shout out to my our amazing team at Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. We have literally put this together in less than 10 days, what would normally take over 90 days to accomplish. So bless you guys. You're amazing. Thank you. I am the CEO of, I think, next slide for me. There we go. 2 packages that we've put together. This is not a pitch fest, so I won't go into these but briefly, and that's just to say that there are very specific topics that our clients are reaching out to us to provide, and instead of our normal pricing, it's buy one, get one. And it is, the topics are around crisis management and managing conflict during times of crisis communication plans, business continuity, how to be an effective manager when you've got a newly remote team, etc. So do reach out if we may be of service to you and your employees. The other thing that we've put together is a very specific outplacement program. And that outplacement program is a name your own price. And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. So my name is Anissa Avon, and I am the CEO of Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. We provide enterprise learning and development solutions that drive what we consider drive business results and improve organizational culture. We have expert coaches and trainers all around in in every major metropolitan area in the United States and in key hubs globally. So I am super excited to connect you guys with Roger Blaker today. I'm pleased that he is on our executive team here at Turnkey. He's a professional certified coach. He works with a business development program called the Stages of Growth, and he's a certified expert in that. In his formal life, he worked in project management, and he specializes now in ontological coaching. So Roger, tell us why you're the expert and what are we going to learn today?
Okay, thank you very much. And by the way, people, welcome. Glad you're here. I feel honored to be able to present this material today, and it is about conflict. So, what is that? That should be a pretty easy question to answer, and you think about it, because in many ways we need it. But today, especially now, because of our current environment, it may be something that comes up more often now than it would be in less stressful times. But regardless, it is something that we do need, and we need to have tools to be able to how we navigate through conflict to be more productive. It's vital, and raising the self-awareness is part of the process that I'm going to be talking about today. And so it's how do we do this and understanding it more thoroughly. So I'm going to take you through some processes that may unpack some of this in more detail the brief time we have today. Because it really is the point of wanting to help curb destructive behaviors. And that's a very strong word. And that could be at many levels, but it's still something that I'm not as constructive as I'd like to be when I'm dealing with conflict within myself first, and then how that impacts things externally to me. So what we're going to cover, 3 major points, is we're going to do a conflict overview, and that overview is going to be some videos. We're going to watch a video that's going to do a couple of minutes of explaining more about the conflict that we're going to be talking about today. And then we're going to do a couple of videos, are actually going to be videos of people that are demonstrating through play acting some of the process that happens to us. And it's a way to kind of maybe give you some thoughts about how this may be happening with you in your internal dialogue. So that'll be the overview piece. And then I'm going to take you through an exercise of destructive cycle exercise. This is something that in working in retreats, almost 20 years ago, I began to be exposed to this. This is the psychological part of it. This is the thing that research has shown. These are the things that we all have happen to us. So I want to help you unpack some of that by an exercise. And by the way, you need to get something to write with and a piece of paper, because this is going to be a thing to where you're going to be doing some process out of this that I'm going to guide you through. And so we'll use that paper here shortly. And then lastly is changing the response. It's giving you some tools that may help you begin to implement a little more in depth about how you can successfully work through a conflict. Needless to say, we got a little bit of time here to expose this to you. This is just probably as much as anything help you with maybe more in-depth self-awareness, some ways to practice that. But this is a very challenging process to learn to become better at doing, and I'll explain more of that in a minute. So we're going to now watch a video. It's going to do a little more explanation of this. And then after that, we're going to watch a couple of role play videos right after this one.
Yelling, caving in, gossiping. Whether it's a brief dispute or a lingering issue, we've all done things in conflict that we're not proud of. We know they don't help, so why do we do them? What's actually powering these responses? Let's take a closer look. Hidden inside is a thought, often unconscious. Psychologists call this an automatic thought. It just pops into our heads. Usually, we don't even know we're thinking it. Take these two, for example. They're in a meeting, and she interrupts him. His automatic thought might be, she's trying to make me look stupid. And because it's automatic, he doesn't even think to challenge it. Instead, he gets angry and lashes out with a sarcastic response. So here's one way to look at unproductive conflict. There's an event, the interruption. We have an automatic thought, she's trying to make me look stupid. And there's a destructive response, in this case, sarcasm. And so, to make conflict more productive, the first step is to understand both this, your automatic thought, and this, your destructive response.
Okay, now you got a little more detail of how this process works that we use to help in training a workshop. So what we're going to do now is just do a real brief reflection on this, how it works. You have a conflicting situation. So I want you to think about this because we're going to come back and actually get a little more depth for you personally around this. So I would say something happens that triggers us, that creates some kind of an emotional reaction, and it can be with people, but doesn't only have to be with people. It could be a situation where, say, your schedule got changed suddenly from something you had high expectations on, for an example. So it's the internal message. Conflict can come from many places. Obviously, many times, probably most times, it comes with our interactions with others. Then you have these automatic thoughts. And like the video said, many times we don't even know we've had this. This is something that started learning this when we were doing this work with people in leadership nearly 20 years now, that these automatic thoughts oftentimes are not even something we're conscious of. So part of this work we're talking about today is learning how to maybe capture that, step back and start realizing what I'm thinking. And then we have the destructive response. And by the way, when I say destructive, that doesn't mean that I'm always going to be, say, like in an attack mode. That isn't what that means. For an example, there are actually 4 different ways that we deal with conflict that are not healthy. One of them is fight, and then freeze, and appease. Those are the 4. And by the way, this does not mean that if I'm in a conflicting situation and I can tell it's starting to get intense, that I may want to take a time out. Just to be clear, stepping back from something does not mean one of these 4 things here. When I use these 4 terms here, I'm talking about something that's really non-productive. It's not going to really help resolve issues if I do fight, flight, freeze, or appease. So now we're going to watch some videos here of role play. This is going to be Sally, and I want to set this up a little bit. You're going to see 2 people interact. And don't think about whether one person reports to the other, the level hierarchy, none of that matters. That's non-existent as far as what we're going to do. We just want to demonstrate a situation where 2 people are interacting, and then there's conflict occurs out of this, and just watch what happens here, and then I'll talk about it a little bit after the video's over.
I think they're going to make their goals.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Dante and Tom definitely have that under control.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, it looks like the last thing on the agenda is to let you know that I had to move the next meeting.
Oh yeah, what time?
This afternoon at 4 o'clock.
All right, you know I'm going to be out this afternoon. Why do we have to move it? That doesn't seem fair.
Well, Ryan is out of the office until noon. I can only do 4 p.m., and then Fran and Lou would have to shift another meeting.
Wait, my stuff's important too. I have some things I need to cover.
Okay, well, why don't you let me know what they are, and then I will bring them up for you.
She's not listening to me. She needs to show some consideration. I want to be there, so this afternoon just doesn't work.
We all have to miss sometimes. I will follow up with you after.
Is she cutting me out? She is totally cutting me out. Stephanie, I need to be there, so we're going to have to reschedule this meeting.
Seriously? We're talking about you missing versus 4 people missing.
I'm done. I am shutting this down. No, we're talking about you and Ryan missing the meeting. We're talking about the two of you expecting everyone else to arrange their things so that it works around your schedules all the time.
Sally, we accommodate your schedule too. Where's this coming from?
I'm winning this no matter what. I'm going to talk to Lou and Fran. We're going to reschedule this meeting.
All right.
I don't feel sorry for Lou and Fran.
So Sally's automatic thoughts. Where did Sally's thoughts take a negative turn? Now, they're not necessarily a right or wrong answer about this. It's just something to kind of revisit what happened here. That doesn't seem fair. Wait, my stuff's important too. She's not listening to me. She needs to have some consideration. Is she cutting me out? She's totally cutting me out. I'm done. I am shutting this down. I'm winning this at no matter what. If you look at the pattern here, one of the things that I see in this as this is deteriorating, her negative thinking is going to a darker and darker place. Then this is an example of that I know I've experienced personally. I think if you think of certain situations, you could see when you think back that it wasn't just a single thought. And the way I look at this, the word I use when my own experience is, I get taken hostage. My survival mode kicks in to where it's fight, flight, freeze, or appease, and I lose the cognitive ability to stay present. And it just shuts down. And in that state of mind, if I don't have a way to interrupt this or disrupt this, this is where it can lead to. So there's one example. So now let's go ahead and watch the next one. This is going to be Dante.
So I want to, before you start, I just want to give you a couple of things that our folks on the call have said. Thanks, Catherine. She said, she's also trying to control the situation. And something that you said earlier, I want you to come back around to later and address, and that is what's the pattern interrupter that's required? In the middle of that, it's oftentimes difficult once you're at that emotional state to unwind and to get your needs met. So I know you're going to cover that later, but I did want to.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm glad they're asking because they're right on point because because I'm covering here, it's like, well, okay, got information because this is not simple. So we're going to touch on that and hopefully be able to unpack it thoroughly enough that you'll be able to take some information away that it's going to probably require further research, but you'll have some starting points here.
Beautiful.
So, all right, good, excellent, super. All right, so I am going to start this one up and that's what happens to Dante.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Good stuff. Hey, Dante, do you have a minute?
I wonder what this is about. Yeah.
You got that report for me?
He seems frustrated. I was planning on getting it to you by the end of today.
Oh, yeah. Well, where are you at on it?
He thinks I'm not going to come through. I just said I'd get it done today.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is, do you have the middle section done yet? I want to double check the numbers.
He thinks I'm going to screw this up. The numbers are fine.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they are. It's just, I want to make sure because so much hangs on those numbers.
He thinks I'm stupid. So are we double checking everything now or just my stuff?
Oh, whoa. I was just checking in. Will you let me know when you're finished?
Like I said, I'll get it to you today. The deadline. He's going to make this a huge thing, and if something goes wrong, everyone gets to blame me.
Okay, Dante's automatic thoughts. When do they turn negative? Now, just to emphasize the body language, what I saw in Dante's body language immediately, and it looks like if you stop and kind of analyze that, and we don't want to unpack that much, we're not going to weeds at that much, but in this situation, it looks like these people may have already had some history. That's neither here nor there. When you look at the terms, though, what he thought, I wonder what this is about, and he seems frustrated. Those really aren't necessarily, that could be curiosity. That could be a healthy approach to this. But where it starts turning negative is number 3. He thinks I'm not going to come through. Number 4, he thinks I'm going to screw this up. He thinks I'm stupid. He's going to make this a huge thing, and if something goes wrong, everyone's going to blame me. So you see how this cycled into a darker place again in this situation, where a person that does not have a capacity right now in this situation to capture the thinking, to interrupt this. It goes back to what you just mentioned, Anissa, somebody asked about, because like, how do I disengage that process? And I'm going down this rabbit hole. Now, another part of this I'm just curious about, I want you to kind of hold this thought around this too, is what Dante thinks, number 5. When he thinks this, what emotion is he experiencing? He thinks I'm stupid. Just to give you a little background on this, matter of fact, you can write this name down, because this is a person that has done thousands and thousands of interviews. She's a doctorate in psychology, and she's a researcher. She has done a very thorough research, about 20 years around this whole thing to do and these kinds of behaviors, and written books about it. So Brene Brown, B-R-E-N-E, Brown, Brene Brown. Go look her up. She's got TED Talks. Matter of fact, she's one of the highest number of people viewing her TED Talks because it's that impactful. That kind of gives some deeper truth around some of the things that are going on with us psychologically. Matter of fact, oftentimes this thing of 5, he thinks I'm stupid. The deeper story I'm telling myself, that I'm questioning myself, is maybe I am stupid. Because this goes back to the heart of matters from us from a very early age, and how we grew up with certain thinking and how we make agreements to ourselves about things. So don't want to get down too much into this, but I think the more things we kind of understand what's going on inside of us, the more knowledge we have about that. Then if we have knowledge, then we can go start doing something about it.
That's right. Yeah, I want to just say, one thing about that. I find that when we share this message with folks, oftentimes it's easy to look at the role-playing scenarios and see the insecurity, or see the self-limiting thoughts that would create, "Oh, he must think I'm stupid," right? And our work with emotional intelligence would tell us that what's going on with them. But I think one of the points of some of the work that you do, Roger, is specific that we all have. If there's anything in our lives that keeps us from having that place of equanimity, that place of I'm resilient, I'm strong, I can handle whatever, the universe, God, life throws my way, I'm adaptable, I'm resourceful, I don't take things personal, right? Anything that puts us in that space of reacting in anger, in frustration, in conflict, means we too have an opportunity there to think, what are these automatic thoughts? How is my mind playing tricks on me?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're going to continue to get into that, but I think that's an important part of this part of the lesson. It's also about reflecting for ourselves, when do I do that? And judge another person's intentions.
Well, and that's the exact point, Anissa, and that's really one of the key pieces. If anything, take note of this. This piece of paper you have, you can put it off the side. If I want to become more effective a communicator and relationship builder, it's necessary for me to look at myself first before I look at anyone else, because the biggest problem that I've discovered I have is not with anybody else or anything. It's within me. And that is a lifelong work of magnitude. My belief is there's not a more difficult challenge we have in life than working on ourselves. Because if we start there, we can make inroads into this. So being committed to that.
Right.
Okay, now what we're going to do now is we're going to go through this exercise. So that sheet of paper you have, here's what I want you to do. I want you to draw a big box on that piece of paper. Just draw a big old square. And once you get that square done, I want you to divide it in 4 parts. I want you to have a vertical line down the middle and a horizontal line across the middle. So you end up having 4 squares. And we're going to walk through this exercise, and this is going to give you something that you can use going forward to unpack. Because the question was asked a minute ago, how do I interrupt this? Well, you need a tool to be able to start practicing it, because it's probably not going to be a thing you're going to do it immediately. It's going to probably have to be after I've stepped into it and I realize the next day or two and everything, you know what I did, that was kind of dumb. Or man, I realized that my reaction to that was over, that was not the appropriate level. So sometimes it's going to probably take unpacking it afterward, but you need a tool to be able to kind of put through the process to be able to deepen your understanding of this and more internalize it. So what I want you to do in the top left-hand box is I want to put event conflict, write that word in there. On the top right-hand side, I want you to put automatic thought. The bottom right-hand side, I want you to put emotion/feeling. And the bottom left-hand side, destructive response. This is something you can go make copies of this as you go along here and do this as an exercise. So here's what I want you to do. I told you about the event occurring early in this thing, about event happening to you. So what I want you to take a minute. I want you to think about a situation that's occurred to you that you've had a negative reaction to. You had a strong reaction to. Something that didn't go well, disturbed you, bothered you, you felt angry, felt hurt, sad, whatever. I want you to think about a specific thing down here and just put a note in that event conflict. It could be a person, or it could be, like I said, it could be a big disappointment. This event I was going to go to got canceled, and I was really looking forward to it. So it could be a person, whatever. Doesn't have to be a long wording, just something to kind of remember. This is what the part that I was experiencing, the person, the situation, or whatever is the event. So note that in there.
So while you're doing that, folks, if Roger, I have a question for you. So working through this process, what was the event? What was the conflict? What was my automatic thought? How did that make me feel? And what was my destructive response? What will that give me that I don't have, in that I'm assuming is aimed at helping me manage conflict more effectively? So what is this process going to give to me?
This is the area where you can really start raising your awareness, because we have to have an understanding of something first before we can change it. And so great question, because what I'm going to walk you through here, I think is going to unpack some of that, because this is the whole process. Like I said, where this will probably occur if you really are committed to wanting, because I realize, I want to be more effective. I want to be a more effective leader, impact person, or whatever. And it is due to relationship. It's how I handle and improve those areas, how I maximize my impact in relationships. How am I proactive? Well, in order to do that, if I'm letting myself be taken hostage and emotionally, I need some way of identifying what's really going on. So this exercise here is to give you some example of this, because we're going to have some terms here for you to reflect on. So let me go through this and see that if maybe this answers some of your question. We can come back to it and visit more if we need to. But what I want you to do now is I'm going to give you some terms here to the automatic thoughts. And what I want you to do is take about 20 seconds. I want you to go down through these based on that event that you wrote down and see if one of these looks similar, because it's not a matter of you have to think it up yourself. The reason why this is really key is because this is the part that really trips us up. Most of the time, we don't even know we even had these thoughts, because all we know now is we're angry, upset, we've got an emotion. We don't know we had a thought that happened before that, because it happens so fast sometimes. So looking these over might give you a cue to that event that occurred to you. Is there something around one of these that's close to it that kind of nails in the thought I recognize that I had now that I look back and review it? The point of it is, you may have to go through this a number of times because you had something happen, you got triggered, whatever, and then you may have to sit down once you cool off, and once your cognitively ability, your front lobe of your brain can now function better, to sit down and unpack it. Because if we've been taken hostage, we don't have the capacity to think. Our IQ drops about 30 points. So we become stupid, because when we get agitated, angry, upset, we go into survival mode. Our amygdala kicks in. We lose the ability, the capacity to think. And we actually do become dumber, because our oxygen intake and our breathing and how we're impacted. So I don't want to go through all the things that are physiologically going on with us, but this is what's happening when we get in these situations. So we have to be at a point to where you can come back and unpack this. So what I'm giving you now is material to give you a way to go through the exercise to get a better understanding of what's happening to you personally in your own story. And from that, then you begin to be able to put some things together to how to improve it. So look at one of these, determine, and don't write the whole thing in necessarily, just use the number and put that over in the automatic thought box.
All righty.
All right. So now then, we got that. Now we're going to get in an area that may be a little more difficult for people to do too. But I will tell you a little bit my own personal story without getting too dramatic about this. But my way of being raised, everything, I didn't recognize feelings. I knew anger, but I didn't know feelings. So one thing that I don't know where people are with that, but sometimes we don't really know what we feel. It's an exercise of learning how we feel. So what I want you to do is look at one of these terms here based on that event occurred, what your thoughts were, and see if you recognize one of these terms in here that was a feeling that you recognize now looking back at it, that you felt, that you experienced. So just pick one as best you can.
And then write that in that emotion box, huh?
Yep. Now I want to point something out here. There's a word that I don't have in here yet. And the reason I didn't want to put it in here because it's been my experience, and we as coaches and just living life know that this is a part that goes on dramatically a lot, and that's anger. The reason I didn't put there first because that may be what I'm recognizing, but a lot of times, and anger is a good thing. Matter of fact, all these feelings are valid. They're good. They're good to have the ability to be able to feel these things, including anger. Anger is an energizer to take action. But unfortunately, I don't know about historically throughout time, but my own experience today is we see a huge amount of anger, and we have it propagated by a lot of things that we watch and see that are covering up deeper issues and challenges and opportunities. So anger could have been the one, but I would challenge anybody to first stop and say, was there a deeper feeling under the anger that I'm not willing to get in touch with, or I kind of use anger to avoid other feelings? So again, we're not doing psychology stuff here, but it is psychological, and it is reality of the world we live in. And I'll just say, this is my own personal experience I'm speaking to here.
Well, and
I'm not an expert in this, so.
I was just going to say, anyone that's read the book from, I think it was probably the 90s, maybe the early 2000s, but it was Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. He lays out a spectrum of emotions. And from his perspective, there is always a more costly emotion underneath anger. Anger may be how it's expressed. Anger may be our self-survival mechanism, because it's what we're used to. But underneath that is always going to be a level of fear. And underneath that is always going to be a level of deeper concern. And many of us don't necessarily recognize how to be influential by managing our emotions, not just from a topical perspective, but from a deeper, what's really going on for me. And that's part of what those videos were sharing, is those automatic thoughts are actually coming from a deeper place. And there's an opportunity there to check our perception.
Perfectly said. And I'll tell you the one that is probably core, that is that Brene Brown really wrote about this through her research. Matter of fact, her research took her down a path that she didn't want to go. And what she learned from research, which is proven, because when you interview thousands of people and foundationally, this is what comes up, you know there's truth to it. And number 13, shame. Mm-hmm. That's a foundational one, just like in Dante's case. Yep. Bobby's thing about stupid everything started hitting something where shame was stepping into there. And who wants to deal with that, right? But that's the point of this. It's like, how do I take some of this and learn how to more realistically understand what's going on inside of me? Because I can't change anything out there. The only thing I really have control of, period, no matter what it is myself. And that's what we're talking about here, is how do I take my thoughts captive? Okay, so now we've got that. And now then, the destructive response. I want you to look these over about 20 seconds and identify one that you actually experienced. And maybe in this, and let's use the situation you're in. Is one of these ring true from the event you experienced?
Well, I can share, while folks are thinking this through, I want to share. So my honey, as some of you may know, is a little bit of a redneck. We're in Houston, and he's a little bit of something. He's rough and he's gruff, and he's a bit of a redneck, and thinks he's invincible and all that good stuff. And I love that about him. So in our family, we share drinks, we share food. You could have a bowl of cereal and someone's going to come along and take a bite using your spoon. So it's just something that my family has a tendency to do. Well, obviously, during the middle of COVID-19, we're changing our ways, right? And I cannot convince him that he should not try to kill me by eating my food. Just get your fingers out of my plate. So my automatic thought, now that I'm thinking about it, is he doesn't love me. He doesn't care if I die. My emotions around that were number 8, and I don't remember what that was, but it was rejection. It was, he doesn't love me. There's something wrong with me, obviously. And then my destructive response has not been good. I mean, I have been like, what is the matter with you? And I know people can relate to this because this is a very serious situation. So, as you're sharing this with us, just the fact that I have a destructive response doesn't mean that I'm not justified in having a response.
Absolutely.
Right? The point of this that you're sharing is it's about choosing my response beyond picking up a knife and saying, try that again, right? I need to be able to be resourceful enough to say, don't touch my food. And now I'm going to throw this food out and you get to, make me a new dinner or something.
That's perfectly said, because, and it may not change anything, but certainly if I'm more in touch with the feeling, because you said something a while ago in your message there, you used the word something about not being lovable or something like that or whatever. And again, that is almost like it turned around and you questioning about your own validity or whatever. You used words like it. I just caught a little bit of that a minute ago, and that's the whole point. So how do I express what's really going inside of me with somebody I'm having a conflict with to be? And now here's a word, and this is risky. This is the reason why you don't do this with unsafe people. Is how do I learn to be vulnerable? Actually share what's really going on with me. That's my story. It's not their story. It's not blaming. If I use the I word, it doesn't mean I'm upset with you because you screwed up. You use the I word because now I'm expressing something that's inside me, that I'm talking about something within me. Again, we can get down the weeds too much here to be able to get through all this, because this is a complex process. So at least we're exposing some thoughts around this. Okay, so now we've gone through that exercise right there. Now you've got some notes in. Matter of fact, I think in these we end up having where we share these slides where people can access the non-video pieces of it, right? So these terms could be shared with people out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll make it available.
Because you have these different terms and words to use. And another thing about this destructive response, if you look at these words, you can see demonstrated in these things the flight, fight, freeze, or appease terms in these examples here. Now we're going to watch the video, the last one. It's going to be the reframing of this. Now, this is going to be an oversimplification, but it nails the process of what we do to be able to change this pattern. So we're going to watch that video now.
So now you know about automatic thoughts and how they can sometimes get us into trouble during conflict. But the good news is we can disrupt this process and change our responses by stepping back and reframing. When we step back, we pull ourselves away from intense emotions like anger and anxiety that might be clouding our judgment. And we reframe by evaluating our automatic thoughts to see if there are other ways to think about the situation. So it looks a little something like this. Remember this guy? He got interrupted. And his automatic thought was, she's trying to make me look stupid. Then he got angry and lashed out with sarcasm. But let's rewind. What if this time, instead of letting his anger get the upper hand, he steps back from his emotions by acknowledging his automatic thought, and he reframes by challenging it? He asks himself, is that actually true? Am I overreacting or exaggerating the problem? Is there another way I could look at the situation? And yeah, most of the time he'll probably discover that there is a more realistic way to think about it. Instead of, she's trying to make me look stupid, he can look at this as, she was just focused on making her point. Or maybe, she probably didn't realize she cut me off. And now that he has a broader perspective, he can make an informed choice about how he wants to react. Maybe he wants to pull her aside and address the situation. Maybe he asks her to give him a moment to complete his thought. The point is, now he has a choice. And so, if we wanted to map the whole situation out, it goes something like this. An event triggers an automatic thought. But the trick is, here we catch ourselves. We step back from our emotions, then we reframe our thoughts. And now, armed with this new perspective, we have our very best chance to resist those destructive responses and choose one that's actually productive.
A piece of cake, right?
Yeah, actually productive. So my threatening my husband with a knife, if you eat my food with your fingers again, that's the key, is reframing that. I will use a butter knife instead, my darling.
I started that's what I started to say. Or maybe I'll just pierce it with my look, because my experience is that I get the look, and God, I'd rather be shot than have that look stared at me. So got it. Okay, to reframe this then, conflict, automatic thought, and then step back, and then reframe. Now, the question was asked earlier by someone about, okay, what do I do here? You can note it this way, is just to remember, it's because when you're going back and reflecting and reviewing, as you experience these things and say, okay, I'm committed to working on this, so I'm going to use this material to kind of help me unpack when it happens, because it will happen, is that how do I take my thoughts captive? Because that's really what this is about. What I think we experience, and we don't really in public, as far as airways and things, I don't see a lot of demonstration of people. It's emotional. Everybody's running on emotion. They're pissed off, angry, just emotional. So first thing I do if I'm going to change that is I have to capture my thoughts. I have to redirect them. And there's not an easy way to do this. I mean, I wish there's just a real simple answer about, what I can do this. I can give you some examples how I could really stop and think about it. But in the moment, if I'm not used to doing this and I'm used to my emotions guiding me and directing me, then the first thing I've got to do is learn, okay, I've got to find a way to step back from those emotions and take my thought captive, because I can't change my emotions unless I change my thinking. So examples of that, again, I don't want to oversimplify this, but there's some examples to ask. Is the thought actually valid or true that I'm having? Is the story I'm telling myself true? Am I overacting or exaggerating? Is there another way to look at this? I know from my experience, when I step back from things after I've made a fool of myself or I've done something that way, when I calm down and I let my ego down a little bit, or that stance I'm taking, and I can look at it and say, yeah, I probably overreacted and exaggerated. And I will tell you guys, I can present this and talk about it, but my wife can walk through the room and I look at it and say, man, I am the luckiest man in the world. 5 minutes later, she can walk through and starts looking at me like, okay, what's this about and everything. Next thing you know, I'm filing for divorce.
No.
So the whole point of it is how do we do this? One of the things I'd recommend doing is find some sages, got some wisdom and discernment, and find people to help guide this process. Like I said, Brene Brown's books has a lot of information that gives food for thought. But I'd say the very first thing is making the declaration that I'm no longer willing to allow my emotions guide me as much as they are today. Emotions are valid and good, but if I feel like the ones I'm doing, and sometimes I get into it, I just want to become better at this, a better human being, how I treat people. Just make that commitment to oneself first is a good first step. Now I'm going to give you one more thing here to look at that you can take notes on. I want you to look down these terms here and look at one of these terms that you experience that's pretty easy for you to do.
Say that again, Roger. Look at these terms that are easy for us to do. So
yeah, what just no, find one. Just
gotcha.
one term that you recognize that I do this and I experience it, and my ego didn't get in my way, my feelings don't get in the way. I recognize that this is something I'm successful at doing. Feel pretty good about.
Well, and this is a beautiful checklist too, because if a person is understanding that if they can move towards the easy zone, in every single one of these skills, their resourcefulness in conflict is going to increase.
Perfectly said. And there's the point there. Then I want you to look at one of them, at least one, and Lisa's right. You can go through all of these and go through this exercise and find out if they're easy and difficult. But I want you to identify one right now that's difficult. When I look at it, it's like, man, I stonewall on this one. And this is non-judgment because it happens to me, but usually it's because of ego, not wanting to be vulnerable, things like that. But where's one that's difficult? Find that term. And here's the challenge for you once you identify that. What might be the value in using the difficult behavior more during conflict? And what Anissa pointed out was going through all of these. If you get the slides or whatever, then you can go through all of them and identify which ones, and also the degree. That kind of arrow thing would be, this one's easy, this one's kind of medium, this one's difficult, this one's, I can't ever see ever be able to do this one. I mean, it could range across that tree, one of those bars are that way.
Which is a really lovely list, actually, and evaluating some of my own opportunities. While I find it easy to communicate openly and honestly, I am not always adept at recognizing when my openness and honesty is not necessarily the best way to communicate with someone. Sometimes it's better to address their needs before I say, well, I'm just talking honestly.
Yeah, that's an interesting term, interesting point there, because another thing here, and I made note of it, thought, well, I'll go ahead and share it now, because I said, yeah, because I could overload how much information. There's 4 things to think about. You can note these down, that if you learn to do these better, it's going to make you a more effective communicator. Before you ever start dealing with somebody in a country, let's say this is something that's going to be in the future. I realize it's a conflicting situation, and I need to sit down and speak to someone about something. It's going to be a challenge for me. Regardless of how they react, it's going to be a challenge for me. So if you take these thoughts and capture these to start with, where you step into it, might be helpful. First one is, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. Second thought is, I'm glad you're here. The third thought is, I care about you. So I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you're here. I care about you. And this is a critical piece of this when it comes to truth telling. I know what I know. The reason
I know what I know.
That's the thing, because I want to use the words that I'm being honest and truthful. I'm speaking my truth. Mm-hmm. Because there could be a difficult situation that needs to be spoken to, because think of it as if you're in a situation where you got employees working for people reporting to you, maybe a difficult conversation, but it's going to have to be some confronting because of the situation. That's the part, I know what I know. Because if I care about you and whatever like that, it could be the tendency to give them a pass. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we've got some folks who are engaging with us.
Okay.
One says, I'm good at apologizing and communicating openly and honestly. I am no good at listening and giving reassurance. Another says, I am good at seeking, that's Lori. Thank you, Lori. Says, I am good at seeking active resolution and giving reassurance. I am not well at giving people time and space because I want to resolve it then and there because I don't like conflict. Thank you.
Oh, that's honest.
Yeah. And then another says, I am successful at giving people time and space. I am not very good at separating emotions from facts.
Mm-hmm. I recognize all those. Don't know about anybody else, but those are all true for me.
Mm-hmm.
At different stages, different things. Like I said, the fight, flight, freeze, or appease, depending on the relationship, I've used different ones of those. I'm not locked into this one. So that's good.
Well, I know that we're coming up to the end of our time together. Let's say that's actually, let's start there. I know that you're going to be giving folks away 5 of these really incredible value assessment profiles. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, it's there. This DNA process is actually 3 profiles in one. So it includes the behavioral profile that measures your behavioral style dimensions, driving force. It's your motivators, what gets you out of bed, what drives you to take action, work, and life, and then competencies. It's a self-measurement process of 25 business environment capacities, and so those are all included in this. And then also an hour of my time to, if you want to unpack it, once you take that. And so easily a $750 value. So that's the first 5
Beautiful.
respondents. So that's what that's about.
Beautiful. And technically the system will actually notify folks. It does it random so that we don't have to. And if you have won this giveaway, it'll actually send you an email. But to get a hold of Roger, don't hesitate to reach out to him at roger@turnkeycoachingsolutions.com, or his phone number there, 214-797-9446. Roger, I do have a quick question though.
Mm-hmm.
This has been really, I think, eye-opening about managing our own emotions. And I think that that's a start. If we really have to understand conflict with us internally and personally, if we're going to help our team. But how can HR professionals or leaders use this model to grow their capacity to respond to their team, but also to share with their team and invite their team to begin to manage conflict differently, for example?
I think the very key piece of this, if I'm going to go out there and use this as a model, anything like that, it's important to commit myself that I'm going to do something where I actually can see change in me. That kind of goes back to what we do in coaching a lot. We all experience this when we're actually doing ontological coaching, is we have to find people that we can communicate with that, hey, this is something I'm working on to change everything and get feedback. Because the only way I know if I'm getting better about certain things, those people that put those notes out there.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to improve in an area, I want to find somebody that I can be vulnerable with and be honest with, that really cares about me and my success, and say it's something I'm committed to working on. It's interesting that I find that when I really commit to something and I state it out loud to somebody, somehow that internalizes to me and I become more conscious of that. And because I've coached sessions where just in a couple of sessions, somebody's made dramatic changes, because once they raise the awareness and they committed to something, it gets locked in. I don't know the magic behind that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if you do that, then you're able to coach other people through the same process.
Well, I think that's the key, is we do want to get to this place where we can manage our own, we can move around those 4 quadrants and pivot and shift and choose a more conscious, aware, intentional response. But then we really do want to get to a place where, without saying, oh, the way you're managing this conflict, I think I need to help you improve, right? We're not going to be able to do it that way.
No, we do it through examples. Matter of fact, psychologically, another thing occurs, because I've talked about it, we have to kind of go back and revisit things. Through my own work, I discovered that I would have something happen, and maybe a day or 2 or 3 later, the feelings I had or whatever had come up, and as I got insightfulness from help from others around this to raise my awareness about feelings and reaction to them, that gap began to close from happening in a day or 2 later or whatever. And the whole point of it is, the harder and more we work at this, the closer we become to recognizing it almost immediately. But if there's a gap, and mine was pretty significant, it took a lot of time to learn what's going on inside of me and become more present, aware, to be able to close that gap. So like I said, this is not easy work. But another thing I was told by the same person I was working around, that a small change can have a significant impact. So if you feel like, man, I've got a lot of work to do, I see this thing, and just know small change can have a significant impact.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us. I do want to quickly share with you a little bit more about our Name Your Own Price outplacement coaching and employee services. We have a program that is about high touch meets high tech with our hybrid digital and personal coaching packages. Unfortunately, we're living through a very difficult time. And so the two packages, we have one for retained leaders and one for outplacement. If in fact your organization is going through layoffs, furloughs, don't hesitate to reach out. Even if our packages are not right, part of my belief is that it's imperative that I show up and give back, and my team is right there with me, ready to show up and give back. So the particular coaching program for our outplacement includes 3 different variables. One is the kickoff, the second is the digital coaching journey, and then the third is a ready to fly group coaching. And we're doing this for groups of 10 to 12. And the real kicker is that it ends up being designed for your organization. So you can exit out of there, Roger. You guys, thank you for joining us. I do look forward to supporting your organization. If we may be of, here's our contact information. You can see it on the screen. I can be reached at leader@turnkeycoachingsolutions.com or 281-469-4244. Roger, thank you. Eye-opening.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. So I appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
You guys have a great one. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Roger.
Bye. Bye.